Amedeo Modigliani, 1884–1920, born in July 1884 in Livorno on the Tuscan coast, into a family of down-on-his-luck Jewish merchants, Amedeo Modigliani had a brief life of art, rebellion, and excess that led him to his self-destruction. Unlike many of the artists of his time, he never encountered family impediments to devoting himself to his great passion, first sculpture and later painting. In his home there was an air of intellectuality. His mother, Eugenia Garsin, was a language teacher and wrote stories and literary articles, and his grandfather introduced the youngest of his 4 grandchildren to philosophy and literature. Nietzsche, Dante and Baudelaire were the readings of the young Amadeo, who from a very young age knew that he wanted to be an artist. However, his health was very fragile. In 1898, he attended the art school of his city and Micheli's workshop Dante. In 1906, he rented a small studio on Rué Caulaincourt in the Montmartre neighborhood of Paris, the center of all the avant-garde. He was close to the Bateau Lavar, Picasso's headquarters where the Spaniard met with all the Bohemia, and although he frequented that circle, there was never chemistry with the man from Malaga, and he also remained independent against the avant-garde movement. He enrolls in the Académie Colarossi to perfect himself. He frequented the Moulin de la Galette and the Lapin Agile. He coincided with painters such as Toulouse-Lautrec, Gauguin and Cézanne, but he felt more comfortable among writers. He was a cultured, dreamy and tormented man who doubted his talent. He tried to preserve his dignity as a decadent bourgeois, took care of his wardrobe as much as possible, and decorated his humble room with reproductions of Renaissance paintings and plush curtains. When he interacted with the group of bohemian artists of the Parisian avant-garde, he seemed more like he was disguising himself as a poor man. With his loose velvet jacket, red scarf around his neck, and wide-brimmed hat, he is something of a butte dandy. His depression led him to alcohol, absenteeism and hashish, also a way to escape the social stigma suffered by tuberculosis patients like him. Influenced by black art, Egyptian art, and especially by the sculptor Constantine Brancusi, whom he met in 1909, Amedeo captured in his works in stone the master lines that he would later transfer to canvases. Discovered by the dealer Paul Guillaume between 1915 and 1920, he develops his short and luminous career, and it is here where his style appears. Following the distortion of perspective suggested by mannerism, his portraits begin to become stylized, in search of a spiritual depth which closed eyes almost always do not allow us to see. Of the women who passed through his life, 2 would mark him deeply. Beatrice Hastings, an English poet who came to Paris, and finally his muse, the angelic Jeanne Hébuterne. She, aged 19, had met Amadeo in March 1917 at the Académie Colarossi. They soon move in together despite the radical opposition of her very Catholic family, who saw the Jewish painter as a dangerous influence on Jeanne. Their daughter did not live with them due to her precarious economic situation. Amedeo suffered from tuberculosis, and the couple lived in misery in a cold apartment. He often burned his own works to heat it. After several days without news from them, one cold winter day, his friend, Ortiz de Zarate, enters the apartment. On the floor, remains of charcoal, empty wine bottles and sardine cans, and Modi in bed, delirious, holding Jeanne's hand, 8 months pregnant, telling her that she would be her model in heaven. Transferred to hospital, he will die on this day in 1920. He was buried like a prince in the legendary Père Lachaise cemetery. Without giving birth, Jeanne took her own life 2 days later, throwing herself from the 5th-floor window of her former room in her parents' house, Rue Amiotte, 8 bis 5th arrondissement of Paris. She is 21 years old, secretly buried by her ashamed family in the Bagneux cemetery. It will take 10 years for her remains to join those of Amedeo, under the same epitaph, devoted companion to the point of extreme sacrifice. He is one of the most sought-after artists in history, and his works are in the main museums in the world and private collections. Owner of a unique style, Amedeo painted women like no one else had done before. One next, elongated bodies, and ferradur almond eyes. The melancholic nature of those faces, with a unique and recognizable style, tells us about the body-soul dichotomy. Those eyes, like half-open windows, which take us to the deepest mysteries of the heart, may also be an intimate message from Modi to all of us.